are weeping, are just drowning in that misery as you picture his face in front of you. Of course there are going to be beautiful moments of joy because he was a being of joy. And there are going to be all of these memories that will come of all of the joyful moments. And there will be tears that those moments are now of the past. And then there'll be another moment of a time, and you'll find yourself smiling. You may even find yourself laughing. And what's tragic is when people feel badly. That, oh my God, I've had this horrible loss. And yet sometimes I find myself laughing, or I find myself full of joy. Of course you do. Because the tragedy is in losing him, but that does not erase the joy of his presence. For you only to be sad would erase the joy of his presence. It would limit his existence only to the last 10, 12 days. It would say all he is a source of misery. All he is one who is no longer here. But that's not all he is. And so what you're going to find is that there's a constant flow. A constant flow. There will be joy. There will be laughter. There will be heart-stopping anguish. There will be anger. There will be regret. If only I had. If only I hadn't. And then there'll be joy. And there'll be laughter. And then there'll be sadness. And these are what the waves of grief look like. And slowly, 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 what's going to happen is, we talk about getting over it. You never get over it. I've never met anyone who lost someone they love and has gotten over it. What happens instead is you change, you expand in a way that now that person's being, their life, is now a part of you. They now live in you. And so their presence is always there. It's not quite there the way that you would like it to be there. And being able to adjust, to get up every day, to have a shower, to get dressed, to eat food, requires you changing. It requires an expansion within you that makes room for unspeakable misery. And also makes room for a shower and a meal. Because in the beginning it feels like the two things can't possibly coexist. But as time goes by, first there's just also room for a shower, then also maybe there's room for a meal. And then slowly, slowly there's room for joy. There's room for putting one foot in front of the other. There's room for actually enjoying a sunrise again or a sunset again. And it'll come slowly, slowly, slowly. And in the midst of that, there will be these extraordinarily beautiful moments of such joy, and you'll feel him with you. And he is with you. And I want you to make sure that you never listen to any well-wishing but very ignorant friend or family member who, when you say that you feel him with you, tells you to get over it. He is with you. Don't let anybody try to steal that truth from you. Of course he's with you. His body has changed form. But his body changed form God knows how many times from the time he was born to the time he passed away. His body has changed form again. But who he is, that essence, well, it's in you, it's of you, it's with you. So just allow the waves to come. When there's joy, let there be joy. Swim in the joy. When there's misery, know that it won't actually drown you. It's just going to be there for some time. And then there'll be a wave of joy again. And just be present with it. I'm really glad you're here.
Glad I was really glad.
Have you done a special puja for him here? Wonderful. 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 Good. Does anyone else have a question? Yeah.
In continuation of this conversation, when we die, what goes with us and what's left behind?
Beautiful. So we'll take this as our last question tonight. When we die, what's left behind is the physical body. सूर्य जिसको थोड़ा सा आगे बढ़ा दो भैया. What's left behind is the physical body. But the physical body isn't only the elbows and the knees and the fingernails and the eyelashes. It's also the brain. And I mention that because that which we acquire as knowledge, 2 + 2 is 4. The capital of California is Sacramento. It's stored in our brain. It goes when we go. You've got to learn that again. It's why when we start in elementary school, you never hear kids say, "Oh yeah, I remember this." It goes in the body. But what stays with us is what we call the subtle body that travels with the soul into our next incarnation. And the subtle body is made of man, buddhi, and ahankar. So the mind itself and the intelligence itself, meaning not the actual facts and figures, but the impressions and the experiences that we have really learned from. And you know the difference. So you learn how to do something. You learn a skill. You learn how to ride a bike. You learn how to play baseball. You learn how to play the piano. It's a skill. The brain learns it, it goes. But you learn how to access the truth of who you are. And through that, you have an experience of the truth of who you are. That stays with you. The impressions upon us, the sanskaras that are grooves in the mind, they stay with us. So both the experiences as well as the tendencies. And so Pujya Swamiji says, it's a beautiful way to think about it. He says, from a thought comes an action. From an action comes a habit. From a habit comes a trait. From a trait comes a character. From a character comes your destiny. So along the way, a single thought is not going to necessarily stay with you in your next birth. But when that thought has become a sanskara, it has become your way of being, your nature, then it has become a groove in your self, in your energetic self. It travels with you. When we do tapas, sadhana, that changes our mind. It changes how we think. Not just what we're thinking about, but it changes the very way we think. Where we used to think, say negatively, or in competition, in separation, in judgment. Now we think in a different way. We think in a way of love, of oneness, of service, of surrender. That habit of thought travels with you because that has become the nature of the mind. You can think about it in terms of like form and content. So the content stays here. The content is the facts and figures and things that you memorize and learn. But the form, the very nature of the mind, including the grooves in it, including the way that it functions, the way it thinks, the way it feels, that stays with you. That's why sadhana is so important. It's why tapas is so important. When we fast and our stomach is growling that it's hungry, but we don't eat, well, the experience of being hungry and not eating, or the 50 calories that we, burned by skipping lunch, that doesn't stay with us. But the deep awareness that I am not the calls of my body, I am not the chemistry flowing through my bloodstream, I am not my thoughts, I am not my urges, I am not my impulses, I am not my drives, I am not my desires. That teaching, that learning stays with us. That's why things like fasting, other forms of tapas, meditation, yoga, silence, all of our seva, that's why these are the things that change the very nature of our mind. Because here's the thing, both the brain keeps changing and the mind keeps changing. So even though they're separate, as long as we are alive, they go together. So that which you are feeding the brain is impacting the mind. So let's say that I'm spending my days watching pornography or really violent TV shows or movies. Or I'm playing violent video games. Well, yes, my brain learns the video game. My brain is the one who can tell you like which website my favorite, pornography is on. But the impact is far deeper than on my brain. The impact has gone into the very grooves of my mind and is changing the nature of my mind. And that's why when we talk about watch your thoughts, watch your mind, watch what you feed yourself, not just the food you eat, but what you listen to, what you watch, what you read, whose company you keep. Because all of it is impacting your buddhi, the intellect, and your mind. This is why we read scripture. The memorization of the shlokas, you will lose that. You'll have to learn them again. But the impact of what they mean to you, that will stay. And this is why we work on our mind, and this is why ideas, for example, of, tomorrow's the beginning of Mental Health Awareness Month. This is why, for example, people's instinct of I'm just going to commit suicide. I'm in trouble. My mind is troubled. This is why it's such a double tragedy. It's a tragedy, of course, for all of those who have been left behind. But it's also a tragedy for them because that mind travels with them. You don't actually get to leave that behind. And so until we work with the mind, we're going to keep coming back and getting it all over again. So this is why all of the spiritual teachings are like, start now. Right? Why not? Eventually you're going to have to do the work. Why not now? Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, everyone. A beautiful morning and day to our family joining us online from all over the world. So much love to all of you. And looking forward to being together again tomorrow.